A slow rebound for Arizona's economy. Economists released their forecast.
Slow economic recovery and slow growth in jobs and slow growth in income. And I think the path we are on is right.
What businesses are looking for in a workforce, what they found, and the resources available for the unemployed.
So if someone was out of work through no fault of their own or even through fault of their own, this center has case managers and we have lots of training sessions for them to help them find a job and keep a job.
Plus, what the coming years hold for Arizona's growth. This is Arizona Week. An economist at the Arizona Department of Administration says Arizona is experiencing slow growth. Overall, the state not where it used to be, but headed in the right direction. Late last week, Arizona Public Media Zach Ziegler traveled to Phoenix to meet with economist Aruna Murthy.
For Arizona overall, for the past 2 years, we have seen a growth rate of about 2.1%. And for 2014, we expect the same growth rate of about 2.1%. However, for 2015, we find expecting a slight milder acceleration of about 2.4 instead of 2.1 that we saw in 2014.
You say continued slow growth for this year with the possibility of more in 2015. Could that possibly be a trend for the future?
Well, the total jobs gained is about 114,000. It's about 53,500 jobs in 2014 and about 60,400 in 2015. So I would say if you ask me a question of acceleration, we wouldn't see a whole lot this year, but we can expect some in the following year. The reason being that we have seen some slowdown in the first quarter of the year, and we are also feeling some of the after effects of all the austerity policies that have been enacted in the recent past.
You mentioned austerity policy from the government. What effect does government austerity have on the state and local economy?
In my opinion, I think that these policies, austerity policies, meaning spending reductions and tax increases or combination thereof, have overall affected or slowed down the economic growth. I mean, if we would have been on a higher trajectory had these things not happened, because Arizona's economy depends about 6.7% of the GDP is dependent on military-related expenditures. And so if that sector gets impacted, certainly it has a trickle-down effect on various sectors of the economy, like manufacturing, professional and business services, retail even, because people, when they don't have jobs, they don't spend as much money in retail for the goods and services they need. So it actually has a trickle-down effect across various other sectors, but some of the sectors I mentioned would actually have a direct impact.
Some of the growth we are seeing right now is in lower paying fields. Are those fields just growing faster than others?
The numbers I gave you were actually not occupations, they were industry numbers, but Arizona has a significant share in some major sectors, like for example, leisure and hospitality is a large sector in Arizona. So, and a significant share of leisure and hospitality is food services and drinking places, essentially the bars and the restaurants and all that. So as a lot of people come to Arizona and the local people as well, they spend in all these places, we tend to have lot of jobs created in those sectors. So leisure and Grand Canyon is a big attraction in Arizona. People come to the state. So, and as people travel and tourism increases to the state, some of these sectors get impacted by virtue of people moving into the states and dining in a lot of these places. I wouldn't say they are only growing in low-wage sectors. There are also sectors like education and health services, which is growing a lot in the state. In fact, that's the sector that's ranked at the top in terms of the total job growth, not in terms of percent. Construction is the sector which is ranked in terms of a higher growth rate, but in terms of total number of jobs, it's the education and health services, which is actually expected to gain the largest number of non-farm jobs, 24,200 over the 2-year period, amounting to about 6.5% over the 2 years, which is namely 14 and 15.
The state's growth rate sits at just over 2%. Is there such a thing as a healthy growth rate or even an unhealthy growth rate?
If you look at the growth rate itself, just to give you a comparison, the U.S. for the past 2012 and 2013, both years had a growth rate of 1.7%. Now, compared to the U.S., Arizona is doing way better. I mean, if you just took only one measure of in terms of growth rate. If you're looking at non-farm growth rate for Arizona, it's 2.1% for the same years that I spoke about, where the U.S. had 1.7. Now, so relative to U.S., Arizona is doing better. Could it be doing better? Yes, it could be doing way better than 2.1. But it is also a function of time and what we are coming out of. You have to keep in mind that we have come out of these past few years out of not only an economic deep recession, it's one of the deepest that we have ever had since the Great Depression, but followed by we also had the financial crisis. So it was not just the business cycle, but with it came the financial crisis as well. So it's a combination of the two. So it's taking much, much longer for us to recover. Now, having said that, are we anywhere close to what our past growth rates have been? No, but we are following what they say typically is expected when we go through a combination as deep as this, is to have a slow economic recovery and slow growth in jobs and slow growth in income. And I think the path we are on is right. It's just that we are not finding the rate to be what we would like to see.
As you heard economist Aruna Murthy say, Pima County, the second largest economy in the state, is struggling to bounce back. To help cultivate growth, Pima County's One-Stop Career Center works with both job seekers and employers. Here now is Jim Mize from the Keno One-Stop Center. What are these businesses telling you that they want in this workforce out of Pima County?
Not atypical of what you're hearing or reading in the newspaper. They're all looking for skilled workers. They're all looking for the workers that have the soft skills, which quite frankly is just getting to work on time, showing initiative when you're at work, working as a team member, all the kinds of things that we know are there. Sometimes employees don't have it, and so we try to help. From the one-stop standpoint, when we're working with clients, we try to build that into our system so that they understand the importance of it. But again, for my role working with the private sector, it's mostly about skills gaps and workforce needs.
Can those needs be met by the pool of workers in Pima County?
Well, let's see. Yes and no. There are some lower skilled, I don't mean that term in a derogatory manner, but there's some less than trades skills level people that are available. If you look at the trades though, if you look at technicians and engineers and IT workers, there's not a lot of those people that are unemployed right now. In fact, if you've got good skill sets, you're very likely working.
For those people who have those skill sets and maybe aren't finding the right jobs, is a place like this helpful to them?
Yes. We interact with about 800 or 900 employers a year in terms of working with us and working with them. We have about an 85% placement rate. So if someone was out of work through no fault of their own or even through fault of their own, this center has case managers and we have lots of training sessions for them to help them find a job and keep a job.
Do you have a pitch for businesses when they want to explore whether Pima County is that place for them to bring business to?
What I really pitch is how to get employers engaged in fixing their needs. They have skill sets that they're looking for. Machinists are an example, and we've done a tremendous amount of work in that area in the last 2 years. Getting the machinists together, or getting the employers together with the educational facilities that train. We work a lot with high schools to build that 11th grade through grade 14. Try the STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and math programs. Try to enhance those programs. Try to help get groups of kids interested in those programs. And quite frankly, to get parents understanding that a college degree is not necessary for someone to have a good career path. In the machinist world, for instance, you know, quite frankly, there are some negative implications or negative thoughts about what a machinist does. It's dirty and all that stuff. And you walk into some of these machine shops in town right now. I was in Zygo the other day, and most people wish their floors were that clean in their homes. It's a totally different industry now.
When you hear that the job growth is slow in Pima County, does that make sense with what you're seeing, what you're hearing?
In total, yes. If you look at the 2012, and that's the latest really all-up data we have, we actually lost jobs in the economy. We were down about 2.7% in Pima County. We're looking to try to improve that. I know the economists and the different articles that have come out lately show a slow growth. The positive part is that there's a growth. And yes, it is a slow growth. I see industry sectors, everybody's hiring, but they're not hiring in big numbers. You'll see call centers with big numbers, but again, that's not typically a sector that I deal with a lot. Okay. If I could get the word out to employers, if I could let them know that there is an organization that has people that are private sector based. My whole group came out of the private sector. We really know how to work with them, and we know how to get them around the table. They're all competing against each other, even within the same industry sector, but they all have a common need, and they all want to grow. And if they want to grow, they've got to get together and come up with solutions for themselves. We need to work with more of the high schools. We need to work with the Pima College, all the trades programs. We work with all of them. We just need to get the word out that there is an organization that can really help facilitate getting them together to work on the common problem.
And Pima County is a good place for businesses to look at.
I think the Pima County One Stop is an excellent place for people to come, for employers to call and say, could we meet? Can we talk about some of the programs that you put in place? We've got 2 or 3 big grants where we are actually going in, where we have money to go into a company and work with their mid-level to senior level people to promote, to get them better trained and assist employers with funding. As an HR person, I know what it's like to have your training budgets cut, and we have funds available to help them get funding.
As you heard, Pima County's economy is experiencing a slow and steady growth. Here again is Arizona Public Media's Zach Ziegler with Aruna Murthy with the state's forecast for the Tucson economy.
Our number of jobs gained in Tucson are roughly expected to gain about 4,400 jobs in 2014 and about 6,400 jobs in 2015. Now, if you look at the rate of growth for Tucson, we expect about 1.2% in 2014 and about 1.8% in 2015. Well, it's slower compared to the Arizona overall and slower compared to Phoenix, mainly because Arizona has most of Arizona's jobs are in the Phoenix metropolitan area, about 70% of those jobs. Tucson has roughly about 15%. So, and they are very narrow in terms of the sectors that are more in abundance in Tucson. So that creates, this imbalance in terms of the growth rate. And some of the sectors that were there in Tucson have had to face the effect of the federal spending a little bit more, especially the military-based sectors that are there in Tucson.
Some of the areas that Tucson has historically kind of prided itself on, manufacturing, aerospace, technical and science-related jobs, aren't necessarily seeing as large of a growth trend as they have in the past. Should Tucson continue to focus its energy in those areas, or are there other areas that would be of benefit to the city?
Well, there are various sectors in Tucson that are growing. I mean, you see, for example, health is growing. The university, the medical university has a strong presence there. We have, a healthcare sector is, with a lot of retirees in Tucson. That's one sector which is still having decent growth, not necessarily for Tucson, for the whole state overall. I think it's having the growth has been okay. Again, The university, the University of Arizona is growing, so the enrollment is pretty high in the university. If you track it through time, that's been growing. So people are going to be absorbed in various sectors if they are studied. But if it is only aerospace related education, then if the skills are not transferable, then people have to figure out if that particular sector is not growing, how else can we apply that particular skill in some other sector. There might be some skills that are transferable across sectors while other skills not.
Military spending plays a big role in southern Arizona's economy. How big of an impact have the budget cuts, although I know it's kind of tough to measure, but you can see that trickle-down effect. How big of an effect have those budget cuts had on jobs in the area?
I have not measured the direct numbers in terms of doing an impact analysis of any type, but I can tell purely from the numbers I'm finding since all these policies were implemented. And we are finding that a lot of the sectors which typically thrive on military expenditures, increased military expenditures, are tending to perform poorly, or in terms of the rate of growth or the total jobs, they're not doing as well. Manufacturing, for example, professional technical services, for example. Even the retail trade, it could have been better if there was a lot of money floating in the economy. Typically what happens is all these companies have some budget from the prior years, and so they can continue for a while till they have to face the reality and they can no more carry over some of the funds from previous years, and so you start seeing layoffs and reductions in those sectors which were directly impacted. And sometimes you need to know what the future is, what the funding levels need to be before you could put pipelines into the projects.
What is the biggest takeaway for Tucson from this report?
Diversification. I think in any economy, for a healthy economy, we can't just rely on one sector. And if you tend to rely on one sector as the economy goes down, or if that particular sector has a negative effect, then the whole economy suffers in the process. Whereas if you take a balanced approach, both policy-wise and how you grow the economy, then during bad times, even if one sector you have job losses, some other sector picks up those losses and you're able to sustain the economy. And our Arizona economists suffered quite a bit from the construction losses, and this is a big learning for Arizona, that we have to be more diversified so that we can face those effects a little better in the coming years.
Despite Arizona's slow growth, businesses are still moving to the state. Ascent Aviation Services opened a site in Tucson 5 years ago, and as you're about to hear, the company selected Arizona for several reasons. Michael Melvin, the president of Ascent Aviation here in Tucson, thanks for your time today.
Good morning. Thank you, Lorraine.
So tell me about Ascent Aviation. What's really behind this company?
So Ascent Aviation is a maintenance organization that does heavy maintenance primarily on what is called narrow-body airplanes, and primarily MD-80s, 737s, Airbus products of that nature. And then secondarily, we also perform storage and reclamation, and then line maintenance. So at Tucson Airport, any on-call maintenance, we perform as required.
A lot of the aircraft you have here are from all over the United States, even some from international companies as well.
Correct. We have a service that we provide primarily on the heavy maintenance side to U.S. carriers in the Americas, and then in terms of the international, we have airplanes from all over the world that come in here.
So what initially brought Ascent Aviation to Tucson 5 years ago?
So essentially, Ascent was formed to purchase the assets of the prior MRO that was here. Based on the location and the excellent workforce that was here, the decision was made to invest, and that's been an excellent decision. We've had great results in the last 5 years.
Climate plays a role in what you do here as well.
Plays a huge role because essentially year-round we have excellent weather in which to perform our services, and our customers are able to have a safe environment There's no tornadoes or some of the other weather conditions that plague the other parts of the country. And then for storage, Arizona is the best environment worldwide to store airplanes. Low humidity, and again, the environmental conditions are next to perfect.
You mentioned that workforce. Can you describe where a lot of these technicians come from?
So essentially we've got two pools of resource that we pull from. The one is that we have Pima Community College just down the road from us, and they provide aviation technician training. And that's a nice source of training for us. And then the other source is ex-Air Force or military. And so that pool of technicians comes out of the Air Force, any of the bases, and we then bring them into our facility for training and ongoing conversion in the sense that we're civilian from the military.
Approximately how many people work here at Ascent?
We have approximately 160 to 180 employees, and some portion of that is contract labor, and the rest is entirely full-time employees.
Is it fair to say that the Tucson community has been a good place for Ascent to sort of put down its roots here?
It's been a great community for that. We think that our pool of technicians is excellent, and we compete on a worldwide market for services, and in that regard, quality of life plays into the situation, and we have great progress moving forward.
And as far as the overall picture of the airline industry, Ascent was on the FAA radar, no pun intended, but just this week for an award.
Correct. The FAA recognizes technicians for training, and stereotypically it's called the Diamond Awards, AMT Awards, and we had in excess of 60 folks that were recognized this week. We're very pleased with that. It's a commitment to training that essentially drives the recognition, and there's 3 levels of award. The top tier is primarily for folks that have got university training, college credits, and in fact our employee that qualified for that is Christine Reese, and she graduated from an aviation college. So excellent training, and that's what gets us that recognition for our employees.
Some economists will say there's some slow growth in the state, particularly in Pima County. Do you, as a recent business to the area, do you feel that? Do you see that, or would you disagree?
Well, I think growth is maybe localized to the experience that the business has. Our experience has been excellent, and so I recommend Pima County as a location.
Are there hopes for more growth here via Ascent?
Certainly are. There certainly are. We have a hangar construction that is in the final stages. We expect to break ground within 90 days. Well, I think our experience is good, and again, as I mentioned, we're competing on a worldwide basis, and that would drive our competitive edge, so to speak, and so we are always cognizant of that. We're competing with other countries, other states, and it's a very competitive world out there.
Do you think back to that 5-year mark when Ascent was debating, do we go to Tucson, or is it between Tucson and another location? Was there ever any question about coming to this site?
There was question about this site. There was a potential for closing the site and relocating to a different location, and I think our decision was an excellent one.
Was there ever any debate about keeping this site or maybe selling the property or not staying in Tucson? And why did you choose this place after all?
There was actual consideration for selling the assets and moving to a different facility. In hindsight, over the 5 years that we've been here, our decision to stay has been an excellent one, and we've had great outcomes.
What was maybe some of the reason for that question in the first place?
Some of that related to economic development. Some of the other states have a much more aggressive economic development. The rewards and incentives that they offer are significantly higher than the rewards in Arizona. But again, that's just one consideration.
Would you say now, looking back in these last 5 years, that Arizona has really risen to that expectation that this company had?
I would say that Arizona has risen to the expectation that we had. There are still, for growth considerations, there's possibly some more avenues of achieving those levels of expectation, because there are synergies in our industry, and having more aviation companies in this industry nearby is advantageous, and we'd like to see that growth.
You would encourage other businesses to at least explore this option.
Absolutely. We think it's a great location. The environment is excellent, and the pool of talent here is very good.
The Buzz now with my colleague Christopher Conover. And Christopher, the Arizona legislature wrapped up in the last couple weeks or so, and one of the things we're talking about is the revamped child welfare safety program. Now we see legislation for the coming year.
Exactly. Draft legislation, nothing final yet, has begun to circulate. And what this draft legislation does is it lays out what the new agency will be and the responsibilities of the director and what exactly the agency will have to do in order to keep going and hopefully successfully.
And this, fair to say, will not be the end all. I mean, there's more to come in the next year or so.
Absolutely. One of the arguments is over how much money. The legislature over the last 6 years has given hundreds of millions of dollars to what was CPS. Do they need to give more money, or does the agency just need to be revamped? That's one of the big arguments that's going on right now as this draft bill circulates.
Okay, not a slow summer here on that end. Let's move now to the federal level. The A-10 back in discussion this week.
Back in discussion this week, the House Armed Services Committee spent over 12 hours discussing the defense budget this week. And Southern Arizona Representative Ron Barber got an amendment put on that bill that keeps the A-10 in the air for another year. The Pentagon wanted to mothball the program completely. It will fly for another year, assuming the Senate goes along and the President goes along. Also, an amendment was put on to keep Apache attack helicopters with the National Guard. Now, a lot of people may say, what's the big deal, whether the active duty Army or the National Guard flies them? In Arizona, specifically Southern Arizona, that would mean the loss of 24 choppers and their crews in Marana, and that's hundreds of jobs. So those will stay with the National Guard nationwide.
Huge implications for the Tucson Marana area. So this is some relief, at least for the next year.
At least for the next year, there is some relief. With the A-10, there is also a study called for in Barber's amendment to see what the Air Force would do without the A-10 and how feasible their ideas of using other aircraft to do close air support really are.
Okay, plenty to look for this summer. Not going to be slow by any means.
No, it won't.
Okay, Christopher Conover, thank you so much for your analysis. And that does it for our edition of Arizona Week. For all of us here at Arizona Public Media, I'm Lorriane Rivera.